System crash sends CEO into panic. Then the janitor's surprising daughter reveals an amazing solution. Ethan Carter's heart raced as the server alarms wailed like sirens in a silent storm. Panic tightened its grip around his chest, each beep echoing in his mind, haunting him with the weight of 1,000 failures. Hours of work, sleepless nights spent crafting every line of code, a monumental system crash threatened to obliterate it all. Funding was just a day away, and the dream he poured his soul into hovered on the precipice of collapse. "Get it back, now," he barked at his team, their frantic typing a cacophony of desperation. Anxiety clung to him as he paced, fingers twitching against the polished surface of his desk. The room was a furnace of stress. He fought the urge to rip through the thick haze of despair that settled over him, questioning everything he had built. What if this was it? What if, despite all his sacrifices, he had pushed too hard for brilliance and now stood to lose it all? Doubt flooded in. Had he misjudged his path, ignored the warning signs? The pressure felt like sand pressing down around him, suffocating. Every face in the room, once filled with youthful ambition, now mirrored his anguish. They were counting on him to lead, yet he was the one spiraling into chaos. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Racing thoughts drowned out his surroundings. What would investors think if the data was unrecoverable? Would they see a failure or a visionary collapse? He swallowed hard, tasting the bitterness of impending defeat. The clock ticked mercilessly, each second a taunting reminder. The moment of truth lingered just beyond the vertex of despair, while the fate of his startup dangled by a thread. Just then, through the commotion, he noticed movement by the door. It was Melanie, the janitor's daughter. Her presence was an unexpected flicker in the dim, pressure-cooked atmosphere. He'd seen her around the office, but never pictured her as part of this world. But here she was, the weight of her own struggles etched on her youthful face. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to dismiss the notion that help could come from someone like her. But as his gaze lingered, he saw something else in her eyes. A fierce determination layered beneath the surface. She moved closer, her voice steady against the obliterating noise around them. "Maybe I can help," she suggested, hesitating but driven by something deep within. The room fell silent. His team looked from her to him. A flicker of hope, a smattering of skepticism danced in the air. Could she truly contribute where so many experienced tech experts had failed? A mix of indignation and curiosity clawed at Ethan. Did he dare entertain a solution from someone so far beneath him in the hierarchy of corporate success? But beneath that doubt was something new, a resolute glimmer of opportunity battling for space within his mind. The stakes were high, and for the first time, he considered that success might lie beyond his immediate scope of experience. Panic and possibility warred within him, tightening its coil. Could he really embrace this unconventional route? Or would he turn away at the edge of his own bias, surrendering to doubt? Moments stretched into what felt like an eternity. Anxiety flooded his veins. Time was running out, and the clock ticked relentlessly on. Would he let past perceptions define this crucial juncture? Or could he dare to step into uncharted territory to save everything he held dear? The air hung thick with a silence that bordered on disbelief. Ethan's mind raced, processing the gravity of his choices as all eyes turned to him. He felt the weight of authority pressing down, the responsibility tethered to every decision. A part of him screamed to reject her offer outright, to lean into the familiar solutions that had always served him. Code rigorously tested, ideas validated through analytics, the wisdom of years in a corporate climb. Yet another part felt the flickering sparks of curiosity igniting amidst his anxiety, urging him to take a leap of faith. "What do you suggest?" he asked, the challenge mingling with hesitation. His tone was cooler than he intended, wrestling with the fragility of trust. Melanie stepped forward, drawing in a breath as if steeling herself for impact. "I've been working on a project like yours in school, and I think I know what might be causing the crash." Her words poured out, laced with conviction. "It's possible there's a bug you're overlooking, one that's nested deep within your system architecture. My team had a similar issue, and sometimes you need to look from a different angle." Those around him leaned in, opening up their minds to this unlikely contender. Ethan caught the flicker of his lead developer's eyes. Was it hope? Intrigued by this youthful confidence, he fell into silence, allowing Melanie's words to reverberate through the storm in his mind. "Let's hear it," he finally said, his tone shifting subtly from skepticism toward genuine interest. Melanie continued, "If you give me access and a moment to share what I've been observing, we could still salvage something." She fumbled with a tablet, brushing her fingers across it as she prepared to lay out her ideas. The urgency in her movements struck something deep within Ethan, a reminder of the passion that had first ignited his own journey. Surrounded by seasoned professionals stuck in their ways, he needed someone to view this crisis through unfiltered eyes. The notion of stepping aside and allowing her to take the reins, albeit temporarily, sent a shudder through him. Yet, what did he have to lose at this point? The digital countdown had begun. The investors were mere hours away from reviewing the project. "All right," he conceded, his voice stronger than he felt. "Let's give this a try." Melanie's shoulders relaxed, relief mingled with determination in her quick smile. As she began explaining her approach, Ethan shifted into observational mode, allowing himself to absorb her perspective. He saw innovative connections unfurling, creative solutions bubbling to the surface, ideas he hadn't even considered. Somehow, amidst the chaos, she seemed untouched by the anxiety that plagued the rest of the room. Time danced on the edge of possibility as her enthusiasm ignited flashes of insight within him, rekindling the very spirit of creativity that had once fueled his dreams. Each moment spent listening to her sparked a new flame of resolve. What if this turn of events was precisely what he needed? A reminder that brilliance often came from unexpected places, challenging the traditional constructions of hierarchy and success. As they dove into discussions, a strange camaraderie began to form, one rooted in hope against a clear backdrop of despair. She wasn't merely the janitor's daughter. She was a beacon, guiding Ethan back to the essence of why he embarked on this journey in the first place. But just as the gears of innovation began to spin in tandem, a notification sounded, echoing through the tension-laden air, an urgent message from a potential investor demanding an update. Ethan glanced around the room, an electrifying sense of urgency mounting yet again. Would he compile the core of his team's efforts, or risk aligning himself with a solution born from youth? What was left to gain by embracing a still wavering idea? The question hung heavily like a storm cloud. Would he fully commit to this new direction and faith in Melanie, or would past prejudices pull him back into the cycle of self-doubt and hesitation? The moment loomed inexorably, teetering on the edge of transformation or ruin. As they prepared to act, Ethan's mind reeled with the gambles he was willing to take. The stakes had never felt higher. What if this decision could make or break everything? Ethan's heart raced as he stared at the message blinking insistently on his screen. The investor wanted answers. There was no ignoring the harsh reality. A decision had to be made quickly, and he felt the pressure squeezing the air from his lungs. The clock was ticking, each second reverberating with the gravity of consequence. Uncertainty clawed at his mind, and he felt the weight of every past decision he'd ever made. Had they been right? Had he been right? The urge to retreat, to follow the path paved by his experience and the proven formulas that had carried him this far, loomed like a comforting shadow. But Melanie's words were still echoing in his ears, vibrant and full of potential. "I hope you're ready," Ethan murmured to Melanie, the quiet confidence of her demeanor solidifying his resolve. He knew he needed to turn this moment into a collaborative effort, to lean into the uncomfortable uncertainties that were now swirling around them both. "Let's move," Melanie replied, her eyes shining with determination. Working together propelled them into action, an unexpected partnership formed under the duress of impending failure. They dove deep into problem-solving, Melanie leading the charge as she articulated her thoughts with clarity and precision. Ethan found himself falling back, not in resignation, but in acknowledgement, recognizing that the fear he had felt for so long had been a barrier, a ghost of his own making. Seeing her navigate the complexities of the system with such ease, Ethan felt a flicker of inspiration. Perhaps he had been too mired in the drudgery of corporate politics and technical minutiae. "Have you thought of checking the data input flags?" Melanie suggested, her fingers racing across her tablet as she pulled up various diagrams. The confidence with which she spoke, while still new to this environment, shifted something inside him. "No, I didn't consider them," he admitted, almost reluctantly. "We usually focus on the back-end architecture." "That's exactly the problem," she countered. "Sometimes the issue lies in the simplest of places, not just the intricacies we're used to analyzing." Her forthrightness sparked a realization within Ethan. It was more than just technical prowess they were discussing. It was a radically different perspective on leadership. Here was a young woman, unburdened by the protocols and traditions that had trapped him, challenging him to break free of his confinement. As they combed through the data and brainstormed, Ethan's own hesitations began to dissolve under the warmth of their newfound connection. Her fresh insights illuminated paths he hadn't been able to see, shaking loose the cobwebs of self-doubt. Each time he took a step toward embracing this collaboration, he felt himself rediscovering the daring, passionate innovator he had once been. "We can do this. We're a team," he affirmed, acknowledging not only the shared endeavor with Melanie, but the importance of mutual respect and shared visions. Together, they were engineers of reinvention, those who wielded ideas fearlessly, regardless of title or background. Yet, amid the embrace of possibility, a nagging sensation clung to him. Would the investors grasp what they had created? A part of him feared that their accomplishments might not shine brightly enough against the backdrop of expectations. With Melanie's final recommendations on his desk, he hesitated, finger lingering over the send key. This decision felt monumental, not simply for their project, but for his evolution as a leader. He was standing at a precipice, staring down into a chasm of change. What if they succeeded? What if they failed? Just as he steeled himself, a notification startled him again. It was another message, this time from his superior, demanding an update. Ethan's gut tightened. The rapidly approaching deadline intensified with each minute that passed, and deep within, he knew this moment would mark a line between retribution and liberation. He took a breath, seeking clarity in the tension. The moment had arrived for Ethan to choose. Would he step forward into this new era of collaboration, or withdraw into the familiar safety of old habits? The stakes had never felt higher, and the next move could redefine everything. Would he finally break free from fear, or would he allow it to shape his reality once more? Ethan stared at the screen, pulse pounding in his ears, as he fought against the swell of self-doubt that threatened to drag him under. The message from his superior lingering like a weight, an ultimatum masked as a request for updates. A part of him wanted to shout back, to assert that he was more than just a data point in their metrics. but that would mean forsaking the very collaboration that had begun to ignite a spark within him. He exhaled slowly, grounding himself in the moment. Behind him, Melanie's focused energy was a palpable presence. It both encouraged him and highlighted his insecurities. He inhaled deeply, deciding it was time to confront both the pressing demands of his position and the self-imposed limitations that had stifled his leadership. "Let's approach this from a different angle, Melanie." The resolve in his voice steadied him. "What if we reframe the presentation, show them the data in a way that emphasizes our innovative approach?" Melanie's eyes widened, a glimmer of excitement sparking at his suggestion. "Yes, let's highlight the simplicity of the solution rather than getting bogged down with the technicalities. Demonstrate how our insights can lead to broader applications. We need to focus on the why and the what happens next." As they worked together, Ethan allowed himself to envision the presentation taking form. This transformation was not simply the project's success, it was the potential of a new leadership style that he had rarely explored. The exchange of ideas between him and Melanie was illuminating, bringing clarity to his muddled thoughts. Each slide they crafted pulsated with energy, a synthesis of strengths, her audacity fused with his experience, and in those moments of collaboration, Ethan began to feel the stirrings of a more adaptable leader emerging within him. The familiarity of his old routines felt about to be eclipsed by an invigorating sense of shared purpose. As the clock continued ticking, however, the reminder remained. Time was short and pressure loomed. What if they fell short of expectations? What if Melanie's input didn't resonate with the investors? He squeezed the pen in his hand, channeling the frustration into focus. "We've created something authentic here, Melanie. We'll present our vulnerabilities along with our triumphs. That's what makes this proposal real. It's not just about data points, it's about the story we tell." With each new thought, Ethan felt the chains of doubt clinking against his resolve, rattling but not breaking it. The idea of leveraging their insecurities rather than hiding them stirred a sense of adventure within him. Bringing authenticity to their pitch could be the key that unlocked not just acceptance, but excitement. "Exactly," Melanie exclaimed, her enthusiasm fueling his own. "And if we're both vulnerable, showing how we arrived here together, our collaboration itself could be our strongest argument." Suddenly, the realization struck him. Their partnership was more than simply a mechanism to solve a technical problem. It had the potential to redefine his leadership path. He was beginning to see collaboration not as a threat to his authority, but as an expansion of it. With renewed determination, Ethan pushed through the final pieces of their presentation. Every detail they added solidified his vision of an empowered team, breaking free from the confines of traditional hierarchy. His finger danced above the send key once more, but this time his hesitation was tinged with confidence. As he clicked send, a thrill coursed through him, fighting against the fear of potential failure. He had taken the leap, embracing the unknown alongside a colleague who had sparked a fire within him. But as he leaned back, sensing the shift in his own perspective, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his mind. The ensuing silence was broken by another alert. This one rang with urgency. An unexpected issue had arisen from the project, one that drove home just how precarious their situation remained. Ethan's heart raced again. The time had come to face this unexpected challenge, and he felt the familiar streak of apprehension clawing back at him. In the chaos of what felt like rising tides, would he sink or swim? In that moment, the measure of his growth as a leader loomed larger than any project outcome. Would he continue to adapt, or would he retreat once more into the shadows of fear? Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the message flashed on the screen. A technical failure that threatened to unravel their hard work. The deadline loomed, taunting him with the implications of a potential disaster. Automated updates on system performance blinked ominously, and Ethan felt the tension tighten in his chest. He could practically hear the clock ticking down, each second a reminder that uncertainty had reemerged like an unwelcome specter. As he clicked send, a thrill coursed through him, fighting against the fear of potential failure. He had taken the leap, embracing the unknown alongside a colleague who had sparked a fire within him. But as he leaned back, sensing the shift in his own perspective, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his mind. The ensuing silence was broken by another alert. This one rang with urgency. An unexpected issue had arisen from the project, one that drove home just how precarious their situation remained. Ethan's heart raced again. The time had come to face this unexpected challenge, and he felt the familiar streak of apprehension clawing back at him. In the chaos of what felt like rising tides, would he sink or swim? In that moment, the measure of his growth as a leader loomed larger than any project outcome. Would he continue to adapt, or would he retreat once more into the shadows of fear? Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the message flashed on the screen, a technical failure that threatened to unravel their hard work. The deadline loomed, taunting him with the implications of a potential disaster. Automated updates on system performance blinked ominously, and Ethan felt the tension tighten in his chest. He could practically hear the clock ticking down, each second a reminder that uncertainty had reemerged like an unwelcome specter.
"Melanie," he called, his voice steadier than he felt. She looked up, her brow furrowing in concern as she absorbed the gravity of the notification. "We've hit a snag. I need your insights." In that moment, Ethan's mind raced. A part of him wanted to retreat into a defensive stance, to shield himself from the repercussions of the failing system. But he refused to succumb to that instinct. Instead, he called upon the very essence of what they had just crafted together, an authentic and vulnerable approach. Let's consider this from all angles. What are the possible implications, and how can we turn this around? As they began to dissect the problem, Melanie stepped forward, her analytical mind firing on all cylinders. "We could present not just the issue, but the steps toward resolution. It's a chance to show our adaptability and the depth of our commitment. If we manage this well, it might even strengthen the pitch." Ethan observed her with a growing admiration. This was the spirit he needed, and, in a way, the leadership he aspired to embody. He decided to lean into her strengths, fostering an environment where both their talents could flourish. Together, they formed a spongy wall against the encroaching dread. "Okay," he said, gaining momentum. "What resources can we pull to fix this? Can we liaise with IT for an immediate fix while we reconstruct our figures to reflect the projected outcomes?" Melanie nodded, visibly rising to the challenge. "We could even draft a transparent update to stakeholders, outlining our process and rallying them behind us. We need to frame it as a critical learning moment." Ethan felt a flicker of pride heating his chest. His initial impulse to hunker down and hide had transformed into a calculated strategy to engage and lead. As she started mapping out the action items, Ethan engaged with profound clarity. Moments later, he was on the phone with the IT department, articulating the urgency of their situation with newfound confidence. "We need solutions now, not excuses. Our next presentation is at risk, and if we work together effectively, we can harness this setback as a pivotal moment." The transition from panic to purpose steadied him. Each update energized his resolve. The dialogue with IT reflected back the leadership qualities he sought to embrace. As the call wrapped, he felt grounded, the clouds of doubt starting to part. But then, just as momentum surged, he paused. Would his credibility survive the storm? The impending deadline loomed like an ominous shadow. If they couldn't resolve this, he could potentially lose everything he had just begun to build. Ethan gazed out at the horizon beyond the office window, noting how the city skyline seemed oblivious to his struggles. Then a thought struck him. a realization that had eluded him until this juncture. This wasn't just about saving a project or navigating his career. It was an opportunity to redefine his personal leadership narrative.
What kind of leader would he choose to be? One who grappled with adversity by shielding himself from it, or one who faced challenges head-on, inviting collaboration and transparency? He didn't want to retreat. He wanted to stand at the forefront. Just then, an idea sparked as Melanie detailed a plan for the stakeholders update. What if they included a section showcasing not only the challenges, but the very human elements of facing them together? He felt the thoughts unfurling, brimming with potential. As they solidified their approach, an unexpected combination of excitement and anxiety bubbled within him. He realized he stood on the precipice of something transformative. This decision could galvanize his team and could reshape their future. With a renewed sense of purpose, Ethan felt a burning question at the forefront of his mind. Would he rise to meet this challenge, or would he falter just as success came into view? As the room buzzed with newfound energy, he couldn't ignore the nagging thought that something, perhaps a revelation or external factor, might disrupt their plans yet again. What else awaited them in this turbulent sea? The hours melted away as Ethan and Melanie pored over their new plan. Each moment felt like a test, but beneath the surface, he sensed something deeper taking shape within him. No longer merely reacting to the crisis, Ethan was learning to steer the ship through uncharted waters. He tracked every detail, discovering a fire within that had long lain dormant. "All right," Melanie said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. "Let's assume IT can restore our systems. What's next? We have to anticipate questions from the stakeholders." Ethan nodded, a thrill coursing through him. "We need to prepare a proactive FAQ. Anticipating their concerns will show we're not just responding, but leading." Instinctively, he reached for a notepad and began jotting down potential questions. It felt invigorating, each item shaping his vision further. Suddenly, a thought struck him. "Melanie, we should pull in the story of the challenges we've faced since we started. Not just facts and figures, let's include the human element. Our journey illustrates resilience and adaptability." She raised an eyebrow, a spark igniting in her eyes. "It's a risky move. Some might see it as an admission of weakness." "Yes," Ethan countered, "but it's also an admission of honesty. We're not just selling a pitch, we're also demonstrating leadership in troubleshooting." He authorized the idea with a nod, conviction crystallizing as they further developed their narrative. Over the ensuing hours, the glow of the office's fluorescent lights became a surreal backdrop for their newfound urgency. As they devised strategic points to present, Ethan's confidence began shifting from a mere survival instinct into a constructive force for change. He questioned himself less, focusing instead on collaborative solutions. Around the midnight mark, Ethan stood by the window again, staring into the city's darkened streets, filled with potential. The late hour hampered clarity, but he felt nimble, attuning himself to the rhythms of his own leadership evolving. What had once threatened to dissolve their efforts was now a potent opportunity. "Can you believe how quickly it went from disaster to this?" Melanie remarked, her voice filled with renewed vigor. Ethan turned to her, a grin stretched across his face. "It's amazing what can happen when you face obstacles head-on. I feel like we've harnessed this whole experience into something transformational." Yet as the excitement bubbled, a shadow flickered across his mind, a ticking clock, and the reality that time was still not on their side. Overarching pressure loomed, urging them to finalize the presentation before dawn's light was an unwelcome reminder. "Melanie," he interjected, clarity gnawing at him. "What if we connected with a few employees directly? We could gather anecdotes about their experiences in overcoming obstacles, foster a deeper narrative." She considered this, a smile creeping across her face as the idea gripped her. That could solidify everything. It emphasizes that our organizational strength lies in shared experiences.
The more they engaged, the clearer Ethan became about the strength of vulnerability and transparency, qualities he had craved but was only beginning to understand. Still, he felt the remaining edges of self-doubt clotting in his subconscious. What if this presentation turned into a moment neither he nor his team could recover from? Each facet of their storytelling took shape, but with every success, a sense of urgency escalated within him, darkening his thoughts momentarily. Would this transparency backfire? Could it summon scrutiny instead of support? As dawn crested, bathing their workspace in soft light, Ethan took a deep breath, absorbing the subtle shift around him. The tangible fear that had defined the previous day faded into something almost exhilarating. All around him buzzed with potential. The ultimate test loomed just ahead, a stark line drawn between a personal mythology of compromise versus one of courage. As they finalized their presentation, he could sense his team's readiness to face the inevitable waves of scrutiny. And then, just when he thought they were finally on the right path, an unforeseen notification pinged through his phone. Ethan's heart sank, heavy with uncertainty, as he glanced at the message. The words flashed ominously. Management's evaluation has called for an emergency review of your latest strategy. Would this setback unravel everything they'd built? Or would this, too, transform into another opportunity for Ethan to redefine his leadership? Ethan felt the weight of the notification like a stone in his stomach. The night's creative momentum slipped through his fingers, replaced by the creeping dread of an emergency review. His mind raced, battling a myriad of possibilities. How had they placed so much on the line, only to face another hurdle? Melanie, sensing his internal turmoil, leaned over to peer at his phone. "What is it?" she asked, concern etching her features. "The management wants an emergency review. They're not sold on our strategy yet," Ethan replied, his voice steady but laced with anxiety. "I thought we were on the right track." "Maybe this is a chance to refine our approach," she suggested, a flicker of optimism radiating from her demeanor. "They might have insights we haven't considered. Let's treat it as a collaborative opportunity rather than a setback." Ethan considered her words. It was easy to slip into the role of the beleaguered leader, resenting the scrutiny. Instead, he could choose to embrace it. Somehow, the pressure of time was now morphing into an invitation to elevate their proposal. "You're right. Let's prepare for this meeting. We need to showcase our adaptability." The pair dove back into their preparations, Ethan's fingers moving deftly across the keyboard as he crafted a compelling narrative, adjusting their message to showcase their readiness to pivot based on feedback. He realized he wasn't just stepping into a professional challenge, he was stepping into a moment that could define him. However, as the clock ticked toward the meeting, a question gnawed at him. Would his willingness to embrace vulnerability be enough to convince the doubters upstairs? He looked over at Melanie, who was taping notes to the wall, her determination tangible. Could he mirror that resolve without losing sight of his own? As the hour approached, they gathered in the conference room, the setting stark and intimidating. Ethan took a deep breath, the scent of polished wood and fabric creating an illusion of stability. The management team filed in, faces unreadable, and a cloud of expectation loomed over the meeting. "Thank you all for coming," Ethan started, feeling the weight of 100 eyes piercing through him. "We've experienced significant challenges recently, and our strategy is not just reactionary, it symbolizes our growth and adaptability." The presentation unfolded, each slide reflecting the resilience of the team. Ethan spoke passionately, revealing the anecdotes they had gathered from employees, each story highlighting their journeys through adversity. He could feel a shift. The room was no longer a bastion of cold scrutiny, but a space inviting dialogue. Yet, as Ethan delved into stories of triumph and tribulation, he couldn't help but feel the thick air of skepticism surrounding him. Would they perceive this vulnerability as weakness? Every nod and furrowed brow from the management team sent jolts of doubt through him. When he finally reached the concluding slide, Ethan's heart raced. This was it, the moment to lay it all on the line. Our strategy isn't immovable.
It can evolve based on the collective feedback and insights from this review. We are here to transform obstacles into opportunities. A heavy silence enveloped the room. He noticed his own hands trembling slightly as he awaited their response. Finally, the head of management leaned forward, breaking the stillness. "You've taken a bold approach by opening up about your struggles, Ethan. It shows a measure of leadership we value, but let's discuss the specifics of your strategy moving forward." Ethan listened closely, readying himself for any pushback. As one question led into another, the nerves he felt transformed into something unnameable. Was it optimism or resolve? He had ventured outside the confines of his comfort zone, daring to be authentic in front of those who could shape his future. Could he navigate the upcoming discussions effectively? Then, just as he thought the tension might start to ease, a young woman entered the room, a stranger yet oddly familiar, holding a folder in her hands. Ethan's breath caught as he recognized her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. "I think I can offer a solution that ties into what you all are discussing." Eyes turned towards her, the unexpected interruption seeming to disrupt the carefully curated atmosphere. A thought crossed Ethan's mind. Was this about to lead to yet another twist in their journey? Or could she be the key to finally bridging the gap between their ambitions and management's demands? Ethan's focus snapped back to the room, a rush of anxiety colliding with a spark of curiosity. The unfamiliar woman stood confidently, the folder clutched tightly against her side, her presence an unexpected light in a dimly lit situation. "I apologize for interrupting. My name is Rachel, and I've been following the conversation from outside. I believe I can contribute something valuable," she said, her eyes darting between Ethan and the management team. Ethan's heart raced with a mix of disbelief and intrigue. How could she possibly have a solution? He would have to assess her idea quickly. This unplanned moment had the potential to alter the trajectory of their presentation. "Please go ahead," Ethan urged, managing to maintain an even tone despite the tumult in his mind. Rachel unfolded her folder with swift efficiency, revealing a collection of handwritten notes and diagrams that radiated urgency and passion. "I've been analyzing the problem from the perspective of the users, our customers. They might not know what they want, but their feedback has highlighted some glaring gaps in our strategy that could be leveraged." Ethan leaned forward, captivated. She spoke with a clarity that was infectious, her voice resolute and authoritative as she directed attention towards specific aspects of their earlier presentation. "If we focus on enhancing the user experience and emphasize the emotional connection rather than the metrics, we can not only improve our message but also resonate with the audience personally. People want to feel understood, not sold to." Ethan's mind raced. This was a voice echoing something he had partially grasped, but she articulated it with the eloquence and conviction he'd struggled to convey. As she continued, Ethan found himself reflecting on his own journey, how he had often assumed a guarded stance, unsure of how to fully embrace vulnerability in his leadership. Here, Rachel represented an opportunity for him to explore this very concept further. If she could embody the message of authenticity and connection, then perhaps he could too. The management team began leaning in, curiosity replacing skepticism, which was an uplifting sight. Rachel's command over the content shifted the energy in the room. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the foundational question that lingered. Who was this woman? What made her so assured? She caught Ethan's eye, her expression unwavering, sensing his unasked questions. "I may not have the titles or the history, but I have the insight." Her voice rang with conviction. "And I believe we can frame our strategy around real interactions instead of data points. We need emotional narratives that truly reflect the voices of those we serve." The head of management nodded, seemingly intrigued. "This approach you're suggesting, Rachel, aligns with our concern about connecting with our audience. How do you propose we implement that?" Ethan watched as Rachel outlined a plan. He realized the committee needed more than just numbers. They needed a story.
The more she spoke, the more he felt the fortress of doubt he had built around himself begin to crumble. He began to wonder if Rachel's introduction had transcended mere coincidence. What if the moment was a reflection of his own journey toward growth? Would he be able to assemble the pieces she offered into something tangible, or would he falter under the pressure of recognition and expectation? As he waded through these thoughts, he recognized a new challenge looming large: the need to adapt his own leadership style in light of this fresh perspective. But there was also a burning desire to grow alongside Rachel. He sensed an undeniable shift within himself towards collaboration over isolation. Just as the room seemed to embrace Rachel's insights, the head of management turned, addressing Ethan directly. "Ethan, how do you see us integrating Rachel's input with our existing strategy? What's your take?" Ethan's breath caught for a moment. Here, surrounded by anticipation and the weight of responsibility, he stood at a crossroads. The room awaited his response, eyes pinned on him, the outcome hinging on his next words. But what if Rachel's insights could not only be part of their strategy, but also a pivotal moment in his development as a leader? How would he step up? He felt the urgency of the moment, the impending decision looming over him. The time had come to face not only the management team's expectations, but also his own fears about embracing vulnerability and collaboration. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, knowing that whatever he said next could shape his path forward. What he didn't know was how this pivotal conversation would further redefine his understanding of leadership. Would he seize this opportunity or allow it to slip away? Ethan's mind raced, and an uncomfortable silence enveloped the room. The management team was still waiting for him to respond, their expectant gazes like the pressure of a coiled spring. He could either reject this unexpected perspective or seize it as a launchpad for both his and the organization's growth. Everything hung in the balance. Drawing in a sharp breath, Ethan forced himself to focus. "Rachel brings up an excellent point. I've noticed in past campaigns how numbers can sometimes miss the human element," he started, feeling the words strain against the weight of his inhibitions. "What if we pivot our current strategy by integrating emotional narratives into our marketing approach? It could redefine how we connect with our audience." A ripple of murmurs traveled through the room, a blend of approval and skepticism taking shape. Ethan could almost feel the gears of thought turning among his colleagues. This was his moment to influence their thinking, yet the fear of his own inadequacies shadowed him. "What do you think of creating pilot programs where we not only gather data, but also actively engage with our customers? Direct feedback sessions could provide insights across demographics and help us shape our messaging," he continued, testing the waters. "If we start from their stories, we can build a campaign that truly resonates." A ripple of murmurs traveled through the room, a blend of approval and skepticism taking shape. Ethan could almost feel the gears of thought turning among his colleagues. This was his moment to influence their thinking, yet the fear of his own inadequacies shadowed him. "What do you think of creating pilot programs where we not only gather data, but also actively engage with our customers? Direct feedback sessions could provide insights across demographics and help us shape our messaging," he continued, testing the waters. "If we start from their stories, we can build a campaign that truly resonates." Rachel's eyes lit up as she nodded in enthusiastic agreement, her energy radiating. "Yes, think of audience engagement as a dialogue rather than a monologue. We don't just want their attention, we want their hearts and minds. If we can curate our strategies around those interactions, the outcome could be transformative." Ethan felt a wave of relief, energized by the synergy forming between them. He began to envision a series of workshops, collaborative sessions where staff and users could come together to share their experiences. This could be the forum to open the door to authenticity, a way to craft stories that the audience would remember. The head of management raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "This sounds promising, Ethan. Perhaps we can outline a plan to pilot this new approach in our next quarter. Do you believe you could lead this initiative?"
There it was, the weight of responsibility crashing back down onto him. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Leading this project meant fully embracing the vulnerabilities he had shied away from, allowing his guards to drop. What if he failed? What if Rachel's fresh ideas met skepticism once again? But what if he succeeded? This could reshape not just the company, but also how he viewed himself as a leader. Absolutely, he affirmed, though the word came out more strongly than he felt inside. He began to outline initial steps, assembling a cross-functional team, defining metrics for success that included emotional engagement metrics, and launching a feedback campaign that was experiential rather than purely analytical. Ethan could feel the momentum building, the previous hesitations fading into the background. They were discussing something bigger than mechanics. It was about human experience. As he and Rachel collaborated more openly, exchanging ideas, he felt an exhilarating spark of potential. But just as the team began to lean into this innovative direction, a familiar face entered, the senior analyst, Jason. He strode in with tense urgency, interrupting the flow. Apologies for the interruption, but we just had a major data breach report. Our systems are showing anomalies. Ethan's stomach dropped. The room's energy shifted from exploration to crisis mode in an instant. All the forward momentum dissolved as questions began to swirl about security, protocol, and responsibility. As Ethan turned to face the urgent reality of the situation, he felt a dawning realization. Vulnerability was not just about openness, but also about resilience in the face of challenges. The path ahead was dual-faceted. Now he needed to integrate the heart of their new approach while navigating the chaos that threatened to unseat their ambitions. How would he manage to balance the innovative strategy with the immediate demands of a crisis? The intertwining challenges seemed insurmountable, but at that moment, Ethan felt the unmistakable urge to rise to the occasion. The new chapter of his journey was just beginning. How would he respond when the scales tipped once more, fraught with both risk and promise? Ethan Carter's evolution reached a defining moment with the sound of the alarm bells ringing for attention. The major data breach sent ripples of urgency throughout the office. But this time, something felt different. His pulse no longer quickened with panic, but steadied with purpose. Gone were the days of reactive leadership, the moments of retreating into the shadows of doubt that had signed his destiny away. Instead, he embraced the wave of responsibility crashing upon him. "Everyone," he called with newfound authority, "let's delineate our immediate actions. What do we have on our security protocols?" A shift occurred as his team turned to him, waiting for clarity amidst the turmoil. Ethan felt a wave of confidence surge within him, bolstered not only by his expertise, but now enriched by the collaborative spirit he had fostered, especially with Melanie and Rachel. Together, they had opened a door to innovation that was now challenging him to keep moving forward. As they collectively pieced together a plan of attack addressing both the breach and the impending presentation, Ethan found himself in an environment of unity. Melanie, energized by the collective momentum, chimed in, "If we hit the ground running with communication, we could mitigate the fallout." Rachel nodded, reinforcing Melanie's point with a promise to gather testimonials that would not only provide assurance, but reignite trust with their stakeholders. The buzz in the room was palpable. Together, they gathered data, crafted messages, and established strategies for an immediate town hall meeting with employees to maintain transparency. Ethan, observing this collaboration, realized that the previous day's hurdles had woven a tighter fabric of understanding within his team. No longer was he a solitary captain lost at sea. He was steering a ship of determined minds, ready to navigate through uncharted waters together. In the hours that followed, Ethan's leadership transformed.
Instead of harping on the mistakes of the data breach, he framed it as an opportunity for advancement, restructuring their approach to security as a proactive measure. It wasn't merely about restoring order, it was about building a smarter, more resilient organization. The team rallied around this new narrative, re-establishing their focus on improvements rather than dwelling in fear. The management meeting arrived sooner than he anticipated, and as they presented the results of their combined efforts, rooted in data recovery plans, action steps, and empowering stories from employees, the atmosphere in the room shifted from trepidation to optimism. The management team nodded, recognizing not just their proposal's merit, but the spirit of unity it carried. Even Rachel received glances of appreciation. Their ideas thrived not under the constraints of hierarchy, but within the freedoms of collaboration, exhibiting an ownership Ethan once coveted exclusively for himself. "Excellent points, all," the head of management ultimately remarked, visibly impressed. "Your proactive measures show mature leadership." The validation hit Ethan like a gust of wind, wrapping around the intrinsic knowledge that his growth had not just been about the technical strategy, it had been deeply personal. He had chosen to open himself to learning and collaboration rather than adhering solely to his past experiences. As the meeting adjourned, Ethan walked out empowered. He exchanged reassuring glances with Melanie and Rachel, both of whom had contributed invaluable insights, turning a perilous moment into a transformative experience. It was evident now that he had matured into a leader who could withstand crises not as a solitary warrior, but as part of a formidable team. The days that followed marked a new era at the company. Ethan initiated regular Lead With Us sessions, opening a channel for every team member, regardless of position, to contribute ideas and foster discussions. The energy within the office had transformed. It became fertile ground for innovation, rooted in trust, pride, and authenticity. In a matter of weeks, they began securing not only the system, but also the very essence of their company, enabling a stronger connection with customers. Meetings became dynamic dialogues, fostering creativity instead of stifling it. Ethan found himself among the ranks of innovator and advocate. When presenting to new stakeholders, he intertwined data with real stories of resilience, framing not just a return to the norm, but a robust narrative of transformation. Each pitch strengthened his resolve, and day by day he achieved recognition not as merely a competent CEO, but as a visionary leader in his field. Now, Ethan stood with solid confidence and a sense of belonging within his own story, a story that had shifted from an isolated dreamer to an empowered architect of collaborative success. This journey reinforced one lesson above all: true growth happens through connection. As the skyline of their office gleamed against the horizon, a realization settled within him. He had emerged stronger, embracing not just his own potential, but actively engaging those around him. What once seemed a floundering ship was now a fleet, a symbol of a revolutionized leadership that thrived beyond traditional boundaries. And so, Ethan let out a satisfied breath, knowing for certain that he had conquered not just the challenges he faced, but also the very limitations he had imposed on himself. Now, this is your moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the momentum going. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's keep this inspiring journey alive together.